If I asked you at this moment of how much you are paying for your hydro, or how much do you spend for your groceries in a month, are you able to give me a number? Hey guys, my name is Jay and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you how I master my budget. How I'm able to make a budget for the whole month even though I get paid every 2 weeks. Most of the time, most of us don't have a budget of some kind. Budgeting for me is the key to getting out living paycheck to paycheck. Even if you're someone who earns good money, if you don't budget, you will always feel broke or struggle financially. Most of us, when our pay increases, our mindset automatically says, I can spend more, or I don't have to plan out my spending. I was always a planner when it comes to money. I always think of the coming days and make sure I have enough to cover until I get my next allowance when I was still a student, or enough money to get me through the next pay. So since I can remember, I was always has been a budgeter. Because I budget our money, I became mindful of how I spend our money, and I am able to cover our expenses and have little extra for miscellaneous expenses. If there's a surprise expenses that comes up in usually a big amount, I am able to cover that because of budgeting. I try as much as I can to put away money to build an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund? It is a savings account with the money that is allotted for expenses that's not planned. Example, car repairs, home repairs, and other emergency expenses. We are still living paycheck to paycheck, but as the day goes, it gets a little bit less stressful looking at our finances. It gives me confidence towards my spending because I budget our money. All of this sounds so easy, but mastering your budget is not always as easy as it sounds. It's a learning process. It's hard in the beginning, but it gets better the more you do it. The key to this process is simple as looking at your statements every month, your utility bills, tax bills, and other bills you have. Most of us has a tendency to ignore bill statements. We keep them piled up until we can no longer cover the cost. Then what do? Apply for more loans or apply for credit and put ourselves into more debt. This may sound weird, but I look forward to checking my bill statements. The reason why is that the earlier I get to see them, the earlier I can figure out my budget for the next pay. I like to be on top of things, especially our household budget. I have a family to shelter. If I messed up, it's not only me who's affected, it's my kids and my husband. Another thing to keep in mind is to know your minimum payment for all your credit cards, loans if you have any, as well as the due dates of the minimum payments. This is very important because if you know these things, it will be easier for you to split your bill payments, especially if you get paid weekly or bi-weekly. Here is an example. Let's say you get paid twice a month. Make 2 columns on a piece of paper. The first column would be your first pay date, and the second column would be then your second pay date. On a separate sheet, write down all your household bills for the whole month. Your utilities, cable, internet, mortgage payment or rent payments. Along with this will be your credit card bills and any loans you have, corresponding their due dates and due amounts or minimum payments for credit cards and loans. Now look at the due dates. Bills that are due after your first paycheck date should be placed in column 1. This means that your first paycheck will cover those bills. The same will apply on the bills that's due after your second paycheck. Like for example, let's say you get paid October 2nd for your first paycheck and your rent is due October 9th. Your first paycheck should cover that bill. Once you do this for all your bills, look at how much you make for that specific paycheck date and make sure your pay cover everything. If not, start making adjustments. Cut down on your expenses. Expenses that you can control like grocery bills and eating out money, or if you have miscellaneous budget, Cut those bills down to the lowest it can get to cover other expenses. If this is still not enough, you might want to consider getting another job or doing some side hustles. There is a lot out there. If you keep doing this process pay after pay, you get the hang of it and get better at it every time. The key to mastering this process is making it part of your household chores. Make budgeting part of your daily chores. As I mentioned earlier, I have been doing my budget for as long as I can remember. But trust me, I still fall off of it sometimes. There are times that we go on these spontaneous trips, and that means the money we'll spend wasn't part of our budget. Doing so, it always messes up my budget, but because I do budgeting, I always manage to put our budget back on track after a couple of paychecks. There is no shortcuts in mastering your budget. You have to go through the process, just like any other things in life. If you want to get fit, you have to look at your diet and start working out. Same as mastering your budget. You also need to know your average hours you worked and average pay amount you received every pay. Because I keep track of how many hours I worked and look at how much I get paid every paycheck, it's easy for me to now make my budget for the whole month. I have a number to base my budget from. Many of us, this can be a bit tricky as there is deductions from your gross pay. This is why you need to start writing down and keeping a records of hours you work and net pay you get. I have an access to my pay stubs. So for me, like for example, if I work 80 hours for 2 weeks, if I'm steadily working 80 hours, I will then know how much would I get for my net pay. Net pay is what you get after deductions. Now if my hours shift and just worked 70 hours, which happens a lot for shift workers, I will then go back to my previous pay stub and look for the week where I work 70 hours and use that number or amount for my budget, that specific pay. I always put in the minimum expected pay amount for my budget. If my hours increase for some reason, it won't affect my budget. Do not base your budget on a possible higher pay, because if you lose hours at work, then your pay will be much lower. You don't want that. At this point, if you're following the process, you now know your pay amount, your pay date, monthly bills, and their due dates and due amounts. Using these key information, it's now easy for you to lay out your budget for the whole month. It does not matter if you get paid monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly. Practice is the key here. Make it a habit to budget. Do it every pay. There are a few components involved when I do my budget. First, my planner. This is where I write down my paycheck, bill tracker, spending tracker, and other things I need to write down. Second, my budget app on my phone. I use Fudget. It's a free budgeting app where you can lay out your budget with your income and upcoming bills. It is easy to use and it's free. And last would be my bills. As much as possible, I subscribe to electronic billing. That way I can access them as soon as they're available, rather than getting them through mails, which can take time. That is all for this video. I hope this video helps you and gives you insight on where to start with your budget. Budget is a very personal thing. It's different from other people's budget. You make sure your budget caters to your personal financial needs. Good luck and keep budgeting, and I will see you on my next one.